Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So now we got ourselves another little mini breaking news video since I had the opportunity, a little window to record this one. So let's just cut straight to the chase. It's right in front of you. A 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle PSA 9 sells for $5.2 million. So it's now the most valuable card ever sold because we're re-breaking these records. We're taking off right from where 2020 left off as far as the collectibles market with some new record sales. So they mention on here, and I'll include a link to this one from Sports Collectors Daily if you want to check out the article yourself. So from PWCC Marketplace says it sold one of six, so a pop 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle PSA 9 by PSA for $5.2 million, which breaks the record of $3.9 million for the Mike Trout Super Factor last August. So this was sold to entrepreneur and actor Rob Gough, and that card was sold about 2 years ago for $2.8 million here through Heritage Auctions. I'm not going to read you the whole article, but this is the gist of it right here. So this is the person in question here. And scrolling through, we've got the card itself. Now, really, the story itself is as simple as that. There's really no more explanation required. The only reason I really thought it would be interesting to talk about it for a few minutes is that this is now another record sale, but it's also now related to what are the ramifications to this to the market. Well, if I stick strictly to the 52 Topps Mantle market, obviously it will have some ripple effect in other areas, but if I stick to this specifically, it brings a couple of interesting things into question. Now, one quick note I'll make here is effectively this is a brokered private sale. It's not an auction, which I'm going to consider everything to be on the up and up, but it's one of those things where I don't like it because I never feel like that's an accurate representation of the market, but now it's created a valid comp, so to speak. That's where the ramifications come in. So this one sells for $5.2 million. It's the PSA 9. There are 3 PSA 10s out there, and they mentioned that here. And as a result of that, now that brings into question that estimate that if you remember a discussion I've had on the channel with Meat and with some other folks related to the Collectible, the IPO and all that, they based their comp on the 1953 Topps PSA 10 IPO they created based on an estimate that quote-unquote experts believed that a PSA 10 of this card would sell for over $10 million in the auction. And I questioned at the time that since that had never happened, it was based a little bit on air. But now that you have a quote-unquote valid sale at $5.2 million for the PSA 9, the $10 million for a PSA 10, even though it's a pop 3, becomes a little bit more plausible. So it does have ramifications up the chain. So that's the reason why I said, for me, that right there is the potentially the bigger impact, because now up the chain, suddenly 10 million doesn't seem so out of whack when the 9 goes for 5.2 million. So that's kind of a critical thing. And as I said, I'll leave this article here if you want to check it out. There's not a lot more to it, but it just gives you a little background on it. And like I said, it's sold presumably through the PWCC Marketplace. Now, of course, as a result of this, there are some other related questions that then come into play. So I just gave you a little bit of the potential impact upward. So the PSA 10 now, the $10 million estimate, looks a little bit more plausible. Assuming it ever came to market here in the current market, I wouldn't be shocked if it did happen. But now there's ramifications going the other way as well. So it's not just up the market. Also, we got to look at what happens with 8s, 7s, 6s. Well, it just so happens we're going to get a very interesting litmus test on this in short order, because no sooner does this happen and announced earlier today than Ken Goldin of Goldin Auctions here. So let me go here on his Instagram. Well, Ken Goldin just so happens to have a PSA 8 up for auction in his current Goldin Auctions here with about 15 days left. So I'll show you the lot here in a second. But here's the card in question. Well, this is the PSA 8. So of course Goldin here says himself, based on today's news, this should be at least a $900,000 to $1 million card, as it's the nicest PSA 8 in existence. Lot 2 in Goldin Auctions. Not shocking that this would happen. So let me show you the lot in question here. So here it is, Goldin Auctions. So this is considered one of the finest PSA 8 examples in the hobby. Blah, blah, blah. Marketing copy. I get it. It gives you right up in the whole thing. For fun, I'll include this link as well, just in case you're curious. Now, the reason why this is interesting is the bidding has got about another 16 days left. So we've got this news, and right now the bid is up to $555,000. So cracking $1 million wouldn't shock me. It certainly would not, especially with 16 days left and the opportunity for plenty of bidding still to happen. So here's a closer look at the card in question. So this is the PSA 8. So like I said, the likelihood of the comp, of the $10 million comp for the PSA 10 has just increased. Now the PSA 8 is going to be an interesting litmus test because now we're moving down the chain the other way. And This one is going to be indicative, I think, of where we're going to see, because obviously if we reset a record on the 8, which now seems increasingly likely, we'll probably be seeing some records broken on 7s, 6s, all the way down the chain. And if you were a person in the market, even for the low end, even a PSA 1 or something like that, good luck to you. You might have to broker a private deal and see if you can find a generous soul to sell it for you for low 5 figures. It was already approaching. It was already at that level, but now it's pretty much assured that the impact will be felt up and down the chain. And related to that, you'll have to excuse the train in the background if you can hear it. Related to that collectible IPO as well is also the simple reality that now because that PSA 10 $10 million estimate is suddenly more plausible, now there's a greater likelihood that that collectible IPO for the 53 Topps, maybe there's a better possibility that the PSA 10 could hit 2.5 million. I don't know if it would. Again, you'd have to see it in an open auction. One thing I don't like, and I mentioned that a few minutes ago, is that I don't like that it was a private sale, because a private sale could be all manner of shadiness. It could just be that the seller was really determined to hang on to the card unless, Rob Gough is willing to, shatter a record. But it is kind of interesting because the card sold for 2.8 million just 2 years ago, and it's effectively doubled in price. So like I said, here's the lot in question. I'll include a link to this one in the description for you in case you're curious. And one more thing I'll include here. This is not an exhaustive list, but PSA does show certain significant sales of some of these cards in different conditions. Let me show you quickly what the one looks like as well. So not too long ago, back in December, there was a PSA 1 that sold for $18,000 at SCP auctions. On eBay, there was one for $19,000. On eBay, $28,000 from PWCC Vault. Coincidentally, another high price in this grouping here. But this is all late 2020. Again, not an exhaustive list. There's certainly probably more that have sold. But it is always interesting to see. And back in the summer, in August, Robert Edwards auction, $21,000. So that's an auction. When it's an auction, I do prefer it a little bit. But again, it just depends on what you're talking about. But the bottom line is, when I go here to the 8, because this is what the Ken Goldin card is, so that's a little bit more relevant here. So the last one sold by Mile High Card Company for $394,000, just shy of $400,000, and then another one in November sold for just shy of $600,000 from Goldin Auctions. So we already know this Goldin Auctions itself sold one for nearly $600,000. The current one is already sitting at about $555,000. So the likelihood is, I wouldn't be shocked if it cracked $1 million plus, and then obviously that would reverberate throughout the other conditions and values, because the sevens were already into the 3-figure category here, as you can see. Again, not an exhaustive list. Sixes were already approaching the 80s into the 90s. 5 here, 66,000, 57,000, 58,000, 52, 56, even 69 at a heritage auction. And this is all in 2020. Now we could be looking at some new record prices in 2021, all the way up the chain and all the way down the chain. And then, of course, that would reverberate through some of the other vintage cards in the space. So we could be seeing some potential new records. So it looks like, as I said earlier, it looks like we're pretty much going to continue 2021 kind of where we left off 2020, at least as far as some of these high-end vintage and related cards. Now the question becomes then, does another modern card take the top spot? If you resold the Trout Superfractor, would you be able to get more than $4 million? Maybe, if you've got the right buyer for it. Again, being a private sale, I'm not super thrilled about it, just because it does lead questions about, okay, what kind of arrangement did you get in? Honestly, and as weird as this sounds, somebody like a Rob Gough could have been interested in paying that just for the notoriety of having the most valuable baseball card in the world, or the most valuable sports card in the world, at least for a period of time until the next person decides to break it. So it's to a certain degree for some of the richer folks, it's just simply having the notoriety of saying, I had the highest ever, highest ever grade. In this case, it's a PSA 9, but in this case, the highest ever price ever paid for a sports card, even if it doesn't last forever. It would be something that would be like a little feather in your cap, because even the Honus Wagner, the infamous Honus Wagner PSA 8, when it sold for $551,000 in 1991, we still remember it as the McNall, Gretzky, or even if you just want to say Gretzky, Honus Wagner, because it has this infamy in lore being the first PSA card ever graded. So it does have a little bit of that lineage, and you can establish something like that. In the same vein, though, it would be interesting to see what a PSA 9 or PSA 10 would sell for in today's market in an open auction, as opposed to a private sale done through like PWCC Vault. So anyway, I wanted to talk about that a little bit because it is in the vintage realm and it is interesting to see kind of when one of those sales comes up. And of course, it was TMZ that reported it because, of course, they did. But again, I'll include a link here to Sports Collectors Daily as well as a link to the Ken Goldin auction here because it will be very interesting to observe now that we've established a quote-unquote new mark on the PSA 9 to see what the 8 goes for, especially so soon after the sale of the 9. Anyway, more things to come up on the channel. And occasionally we'll do videos like this if something interesting comes up that is relevant to kind of the sports card market and what the potential downstream impact and upstream impact would be. That's it for me today. I do want to mention to you here at the tail end that on Friday, the placeholder's already on the channel, but on Friday I'm going to have fellow collector, the Broncos 79, Steve, also from the Insert Revolution podcast, is going to be joining me on the channel for a live stream. We're going to be hanging out and having a bit of a collector chat. He's a football collector and a collector of Terrell Davis. As much as we like to tease him of being the hockey oracle, you can, of course, refer to him that way because that is his preference. He is the hockey card oracle. But we're going to be chatting mainly about player collecting and, of course, collectibles in general. And maybe I'll talk about this for a little bit more on the live stream because it just happened. So it is kind of an interesting discussion to have. Anyway, that'll be it. I'll include a link to that as well in the description. Thanks, as always, for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.